Well, here we go again. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Leading Through Unprecedented Times. I'm Tom Murray, your host. Welcome to episode 9 of this edition. And I am so excited today to introduce a new friend of mine, somebody I was just recently able to connect to through a mutual connection. And that's the one and only Sarah Frayer. She's an assistant principal in Washington, D.C. And Sarah, how you doing today? It's been so great to connect with you. How are you?
Hey, it's going good. It's going really good. And thank you for having me. I am so excited and that, we have this connection. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Well, it's been such an honor to connect with you, both being and working out of the Washington, D.C. area. And so share with folks a little bit about your background, your story, just who you are, where you serve.
Yeah. All right. So, hey everyone. So once again, I am Sarah Frayer. I am I'm here in Washington, D.C., but I was born and raised in Washington State. So I went from Washington State to Washington, D.C. Yes, the whole other side. So I'm originally from Washington, right outside of Seattle called Tacoma, Washington. Great place, Northwest. Go Seahawks. Football season ended, but that's my team. And then, from there, I went to college in North Carolina. I really wanted to go to an HBCU, so I went to the North Carolina Central University. I feel like HBCUs are very important, and I just wanted that diversity being from Washington State. And then I just wanted to come to an HBCU to be around more African Americans like me. And it was a great experience. I enjoyed my time at North Carolina Central University. And then from there, I trickled up to Washington, D.C. After a year of teaching in North Carolina, I came to Washington, D.C., and I fell in love with it. And to be honest, as a child, I always said I wanted to move to Washington, D.C. because my dad is originally from Washington, D.C., so I have family out here. But him and my mom met out here, and then they went up to Washington. So I'm doing like a full circle of my whole family, right? Like they met in D.C., they moved to raise their family in Washington, and then I came back. And I just fell in love, and I started my career here. I think here in DC, it's just a very fun, creative way of a lot of things going on. It's just a very unique place to be in education, where a lot of policies and things are made and really make that strong impact in the classroom and outside the classroom. So this is my 18th year in education. So I was teaching for a long time. I love teaching. Then from there, I won in 2018, 19. I won the National Harmony Teacher of the Year Award for DC. And thank you. And that was mind blowing. And that really just kind of changed my life. And so I always be grateful for my school district and also Harmony of what they did. And that experience really changed my whole life of where I'm at now. And how it did that was their impact of SEL and everything. That really resonates with me because as a teacher, I build strong relationships because you got to know the person before you can get to the curriculum, I always would say. And so learning from Harmony and then recognizing my skill set as a teacher and the change that I'm making, it just opened so many doors for me. And then from there, I end up, when I won the award, like I said, I was on the news, I was on podcasts, radios, and everyone was reaching out, and I was doing a lot of workshops. And everyone kept asking, like, oh, do you have a business card or do you have a card with your contact information? Like, we would love to have more of you. And so God just really put it in my spirit to start my own consulting business, which has been going well. So my consultant business is the APT model, which stands for Analyze, Plan, Teach, and Inspire. And so that's been going on for a few years, and it's going great. And it's all around SEO, where I give SEO curriculums that I've created with writing skills and just also professional development for school districts and people outside of school, because SEO is everywhere. It's just not in the schools. So I provide consulting in that way also with SEO. And I am a new resident assistant principal, which I love this role. Before this, I was teaching. I was an instructional coach. I won an award for my instructional coach strategies and how I really led my school district and my students and teachers and staff of turning the school around here in DC, and what that looks like. And so I'm very grateful for that. So that's about me, and that's how I got to you. So yes.
Well, I mean, seriously, what an amazing rock star that we have with us today. Thanks for sharing part of your story and just part of your
Thanks.
journey there. And congrats on those awards. Certainly
Thank
see you
you.
light up and sharing about that. A lot of hard work goes into that, right? And so just
Yeah.
a lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into to earning those pieces. But certainly kudos for your incredible work and leadership in all those different areas there. Both connecting out of DC, I've got to ask, talking to and being with practitioners all the time. It's a little chaotic in our world right now, right? In the education space, and you're right in the heart of it, right in Washington, D.C. And, yesterday I was talking to a principal asking, like, what's going to happen with this? And is the Department of Ed really going away? And what about funding? And then last week, talking to the superintendent, are you hearing anything, Tom? What's going on? And talking to a teacher, I heard a story of a teacher calling a principal the other day saying, like, does this mean I'm going to lose my job? And there's so
Yeah.
much anxiety, so much fear, so many questions, so many unknowns. And you're right in the heart of it. And so asking, like, putting your assistant principal hat on, how do you navigate some of the chaos in our world that we're seeing just politically and just everything around education and all the different pieces, navigating some of the fear just because of the fear of the unknowns, like what's going to happen. So what is that looking like in your school? How are you helping teachers navigate that? How are you managing some of the chaos to stay focused on our kids? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. That is a great question. And so one of the key things, it is it's hectic. It's scary. Like teachers are always asking, like more articles come out, like what does this mean for me? What does it mean for the kids? And also, what does it mean for me as a leader? And so one way that I'm navigating that is leading with SEL principles to support the staff as they navigate their emotions and potential possibility of the U.S. Department of Education closing, or certain things from the U.S. Department of changing, and what does that look like, Tom? Um, the other day, a few days ago, there were some articles that came out, and some staff members, they were like, "Yo, Miss Fair, can we talk about this?" Like, in the Washington Post, there was one article that recently came out and it says, "Are we prepared to lose the education department?" Right, and in that article, it's just talking about the potential of what could happen and how if this happens, like they're going to lose funding for teacher training, which is very important. So it's like we might lose money. We're going to lose money that supports this teacher training. And what is that seeing? What does that look like? That means that the teachers, the money that we get allocated here to continue their own learning growth, because learning doesn't stop, right? And so that money is now, if it when it's gone, the support, those concerns, those teachers and principals, it's like it's going to affect our students, right? It's going to affect our students' outcomes, the goals that we set for them, for this money to have training. And also, not only that is it going to impact the training for the teachers and money for that, most of those resources for educators is in the challenging environments. It's in the areas of DC and other school districts that really get this funding, where it's low income students and those, and what it looks like in that. So it's really going to affect the student outcomes at the end with one of those changes. And in my school district, we're very blessed, where every Friday is a half a day for the students, and the rest of the day is professional development for the staff. So we have great resources that come in, people that come in, sometimes it's school-based training, but we have, because of those funds, to continue on. All of our staff in our school district and the charter school district that I work for, we are blessed because of funding like this, where our teachers are getting trained on the science of reading and the letters training, to ensure that they have the right tool set to teach reading. And we know that that is very important. And so it's those type of fundings that are going away that is really hurting the staff and getting them fearful, and leaders. And so with that, like some of the things that I've been doing is just acknowledging and validating their emotions, right? Like just go ahead, acknowledge that, make it a safe place where they can say those feelings, where they're going to talk about their anxiety, they're going to make their frustration, and have open forums and listen sessions where educators, there's no fear of judgment. Make sure that they can just have a safe place where they don't fear to judge and just have that open dialogue. And then from there, a technique is using reflective questions to help process those thoughts, right? And what are your biggest concerns? How can we support each other? And the way of framing reflective questions, I got from some of Harmony's great free professional development. They have on their website, they have great professional development for SEL, for school leaders, for teacher base. And so some of these things I've learned from Harmony has really helped. And also, I have my master's in social emotional learning, and from National University, which is connected to Harmony. And I remember in one of my leadership classes, that they talked about that, like how it's so important when we have these things that come up in our world that we might not have no concern on, is grounded in making it acknowledgeable. Like acknowledge that emotion for yourself and for others as well, because you have, as a leader, you have to know yourself, and you have to know how it's triggering you and how that is impacting you. Because like for school leaders, it's like, okay, you feel like you have to have this face. No, be yourself and show that you can handle your emotion too, and you're feeling some way too, and how you're processing that in a healthy way. And so those are some things. That's one of the strategies that I've been using. And just like also promote self-awareness of emotional regulation, like kind of like I was saying, like encouraging those discussions and model motion regulations, and talk about, as a leader, talk about your own fears, talk about how you're dealing with that. Are you journaling? Or, for me, I'm a journal, right? And I'm a woman of faith, so I will journal. I like to work out to help with my stress, and just kind of put it on paper and just leave it there. It doesn't always mean that I'm going to have the solution. And in something like this, it is to understand that only I can control the things that I can control. This is a big thing. But what leaders can control is making this safe for their staff and coming together. Unity is amazing, right? Like unifying and talking about those emotions and talking about strategies of what it could look like if this happens, right? Because I think it's great to make a plan. I have a thing where I say, plan your work and work your plan, right? And so plan it out of what it can be, and talk about those things of, if this does happen, what does that look like? And once again, remember, you can only control what you can control. But that's kind of some of the things that I've been going on, Tom. And I'm also in school for my PhD at Hampton University, and my dissertation is about leadership and leading with the SEL heart. So this topic and what's going on right now, and some of the research of what it looks like for leaders as it obtains to SEL, and how's that look like for a whole school model, is a really big topic. And I hope to, in my continue of my research, kind of fill in the gap in the literature of what that looks like. And this is a time for it.
Yeah, I got to say, my first question, like, do you sleep ever? Because you got a lot going on. That's the first thing that I'm thinking about. No, in all seriousness, well, and wow, what a journey. Such key principles that you're sharing. Really appreciate that, and congrats on you're such a beacon of hope. And I was smiling over here just listening to your acknowledging it. Like we're not sweeping it under the rug. We're not saying like, oh, don't worry about it, forget about that stuff. We're acknowledging it. And then here's some core strategies of really attacking. And I love that last one on control the controllables. A buddy of mine, Inky Johnson, wrote the forward to my last book. And he talks a lot about controlling the controllables. And, and I think that's such a core message. And in the midst of what is that circle of control, if I'm teaching in the classroom or I'm running a building every day, what are those things that are in my control? What are those things that I have no control over? It doesn't mean we ignore them, but there's only so much we can actually do about them. Right. And so thank you for offering that. So, and by the way, shout out to Harmony. I got all excited. You mentioned Harmony and National University. They're actually one of our future ready partners. They do incredible work, and so I'm going to actually ask you a little bit more, even specific about that. If you're listening, I encourage you to check it out because, by the way, no cost with the digital resources that you're talking about. People love no cost stuff. And not only is it no cost, it's really high quality stuff. And so we encourage you to check out futureready.link/harmony to check those pieces out as well. Sarah, I want to dive further into, you spent a little bit of time talking about your staff and supporting your staff and just how we address that. Let's move to kids around the same conversation.
Yeah.
There's such a mental health crisis in our country, which, by the way, is not just for kids. It's with our adults as well. And you talked about some great strategies with the adults and as a leader in leadership. What does it look like in your school in terms of in the classroom? So how are we addressing these kinds of things directly with children?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said that, right? Because within my research is really embodying a whole school model of SEL, right? And how that is very important to impact the students and what does that look like? So a lot of times the difference is like schools have SEL curriculum, which is great. Harmony has a great one if y'all want to try it out. Harmony, Second Steps, there's great curriculums out there that has SEL, right? Just like a writing curriculum, everything else. And what does that look like is like you take a part of your day, you're teaching these strategies, but the whole school model, which I'm talking about in my research, is where it really comes alive. And for example, it's like, hey, we learned this lesson about empathy today. Let's say there's a lesson in their curriculum for the day about empathy, but then as a whole school model, it's giving them time to practice that. It's ensuring that they're making those connections of what they just had in their 20-minute of their SEL lesson of out throughout the day, that you are giving kids a shout out when you see them practicing those strategies. Or you are saying, hey, let's talk about some of the skills that we learned in our SEL lessons. I think this is a great time to apply that, right? And so when we do that and when we build that up, especially in this situation, because right now I work with elementary kids, right? So the students, they're not really reading the articles in depth like we are. But once again, if they see a shift in their teacher or the leader, that's going to impact them, right? And so it goes back to talking about world issues of what's going on in our country, right? Like letting them know like what is going on. When I was in the classroom, I was big for that. And my kids would create solutions. And I remember one year when the hurricane came through Texas, I was talking about it in my morning meeting because I would bring in real life things of what's going on in the news. And these kids use their SEO strategies and was like, we're going to problem solve. We see a problem. And they raised money. They came up with the solution. We had people come in to record. They had a podcast. And these were first graders making a difference because literally me modeling this whole model of SEL. And so that's one way that I do it with the students is really take what they learn from a lesson and applying it in everything we do. And we're modeling our SEL as well and just make it alive in the school, whether it's that we have posters up of what SEL skill we're working on for the month. Like I said, acknowledging when they're using it or acknowledging when they can use it so they can become owners of their learning and their process to really take that in. So that's kind of how I will say the best thing to do when it relates to this situation or just any situation of really giving them that opportunity to make it come alive in real life.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love your emphasis on making sure it's very systemic. It's very
Yeah,
across the board. This isn't a little nice to have add on if you have time somewhere in the calendar at some point in time, right?
yeah,
It's just, this is part of what we do and it's foundational to what we do. And it's
yeah,
such an imperative part of life. And so I love your viewpoint and thoughts on that. One of the things we have at Future Ready is called the Future Ready Framework. It's foundational and it's a research-based framework for innovation, sustainability. And on the outside of that framework is collaborative leadership and inclusive culture, right? And part of what you're really talking about is that sense of well-being, that sense of belonging, making sure kids feel like they belong at school. And so as an assistant principal, what recommendations or advice do you have on how do we create cultures where people want to be, where people feel valued, where people feel seen, they feel heard, to really create that sense of belonging?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So one strategy that I do, Tom, is I will check in with my staff in this way. So I would say, to like if a teacher comes in, I would say, and they do it with me too because I model it. It would go something like this: like, I'm checking on Sarah today, not Miss Frayer. How is Sarah doing? Right? Because is Sarah okay? Because a lot of times we put this face on and we got to leave our words away, but Sarah is still dealing with some things. But in this school, I am Miss Frayer, and so I make that safe place for the staff, when they come in, or I'm greeting with them, or just seeing them in the hallway. I'll call them by their first name. We whisper in their ears. I'm like, "How?" Make sure kids are around. Like, "How's Pat doing today? Pat, you good? Okay, Pat. And then, all right, is Pat working? You know, with Miss Brown, like, how's that going? How's Pat? Now, Pat Brown is all one, or we need to check in with one or the other to really ensure that you are human. We are human, and teachers. Oh, I lead with a teacher heart. Teaching is so magical. It's so important, and they are more than just a teacher. They are more than just a teacher. They wear so many hats, and I lead with a teacher heart, meaning I always remember what it's like when I was in their shoes. And so when I make decisions or have to do things, I think about how that's going to impact them, right? Because it's like they got another demand, and then their self gets burnt out, and then they kind of forget their why. And it's like, my why doesn't even matter no more because you have burnt me out so much. But a lot of teachers came in with a big why of changing some child's life because of something maybe they went through, or how a teacher impact them, or there's a connection. It takes a big teacher's heart to stay in it. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question. That is a big thing that I work with, is connecting who they are separately and then who they are as a whole person as they come into this school, and making a safe place to have that conversation. And just letting them know, like, take your time. I also, on Fridays, I will make time where they will sign up, and I will go sub their class since it's a half a day. And I'm like, go get extra planning time, because I know it's never enough planning time. Because during your planning time that we have on the schedule, you're making calls to parents. You're trying to eat your lunch. You're in meetings at Triple ST meetings. You might be in meetings with me. You're going to your coach. And so I'm like, go have your separate planning time by yourself. And it's so amazing because it's on a Friday, and they love it. They're like, Miss Wright, this is the best thing ever. They look forward to it. And it just also keeps me so impacted in the work. And so I'll take over a class on Fridays, and on those half a days become a sub and let the teachers go in my office or go into the lounge, and have time to have interrupted time to put everything together that you were supposed to put together to start off fresh. And they plan out every little thing too that they want to do during that time, so they get a whole half a day. So that's some of the things that I do, is trying to put myself in there.
Awesome. And just two things. One, just such keys to leadership you're highlighting. You've been dropping truths left and right here throughout the podcast for sure. One is just that value on human centered leadership. And, you see them as that person first, as opposed to the second grade teacher first. Right. And I think
Yeah.
such a key to creating that inclusive culture and that place where people want to be. And then second, as you think through some of the different strategies and being visible and showing, one of the things that I love that you just showed is, not getting too far removed as a newer administrator, not being too far removed
Mm.
from the classroom, that you forget how challenging it is to teach third grade every day or whatever it
Yeah.
might be. And
Yeah.
teachers respect that, right? And teachers
Yes.
respect that, especially when you're saying, go do what you need to do. I'm going to cover your class a little bit. It'll certainly keep you connected to kids. And so love those strategies. Thanks for sharing that. Now, we're getting tight on our time, so I've got one more question for you. The question I always love to ask guests at the end is, what's a piece of advice you have for school and district leaders, for teachers, whether they've been at it for 35 years or whether they're in their first year, something on your heart, something you've been thinking about? What's a piece of advice you have, no matter who they are or where they are in their journey?
Yeah. For that, my piece of advice is always check on yourself and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace and give yourself empathy. And that does not mean that you're giving yourself excuses. And that when you have to voice something, know that that is great and that is okay. Whether you have to voice to a staff member, someone, a leader, a school leader has to voice to the people at the school district of what's going on and how those changes are impacting what we all have is that same goal for those children. It's okay to say that, right? Because I have this thing where when I have to say some tough things that might seem tough, I always remember and I will lead it with, I'm not complaining, I'm explaining. I'm not complaining because I know this work has to be done, but I'm explaining how what is going on to know that I'm not out of the work. I'm not trying to make an excuse, but I'm going to give myself grace and my staff and my students and really look at the situation. And if I have to make a stand to say something, to know that this is not a complaint, but it's explaining clearly how this situation or this task is impacting all of our big goals and getting us back. Because at the end of the day, we're all here for the same thing at all the different levels of education. And so I would say, remember that. If you have to have that tough conversation, give yourself grace, give yourself empathy, analyze what that is. And when you have to have it, remember that you're not complaining. It's not a way out, but you're explaining how it's impacting you and your staff.
Incredible words of wisdom. That's the one and only Sarah Frayer. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your time. It's been such an honor to connect with you. We hope you tune in next week for Arizona Superintendent of the Year. Dr. Scott Menzel will be joining us for our final episode of Season 7 of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. Sarah, thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.